Microsoft is deliberately turning 400 million perfectly functional computers into toxic electronic waste simply because they lack an arbitrary security chip called TPM2. Bill Gates is reportedly erupting in anger as furious users reject these forced hardware upgrades, flocking instead to lightweight Linux distributions to keep their 10-year-old PCs running faster than ever. This is not just a frustrating software update that rearranges your taskbar or changes your settings without asking. This is an unprecedented environmental and financial catastrophe engineered by the very company that preaches corporate sustainability, and the resulting backlash is tearing Microsoft's desktop monopoly apart at the seams. For decades, the personal computer was the ultimate symbol of digital freedom, a totally private domain where you controlled the software, you owned the hardware, and you dictated the rules. Windows used to mean empowerment. It was the familiar startup sound, the classic blue wallpaper, and the endless possibilities that brought technology to the world. When Microsoft released a new operating system, it was designed to run on as many machines as possible, keeping the global ecosystem connected and moving forward. But with the launch of Windows 11, Microsoft violently shattered that unspoken social contract. They introduced strict new hardware requirements, specifically mandating newer generation processors and a hardware component known as a Trusted Platform Module, or TPM2 chip. Suddenly, machines that boot fast, run applications cleanly, and handle heavy video editing or gaming workloads without breaking a sweat were officially declared incompatible by corporate decree. Microsoft tried to frame this massive hardware cutoff as a necessary step for modern security, but to the average American sitting in front of a perfectly good laptop that they paid for with their own hard-earned money, it felt like a forced eviction notice. The core problem is that this arbitrary hardware line in the sand has created a ticking time bomb for everyday users, small businesses, and massive corporations worldwide. On October 14, 2025, Microsoft will officially pull the plug on Windows 10 support. After that exact date, the free security patches and bug fixes that keep your digital life safe from hackers, malware, and ransomware will stop completely. For the estimated 400 million computers that cannot upgrade to Windows 11 because they fail Microsoft's strict compatibility checks, this creates an impossible and highly predatory trap. Users are effectively being told to throw away perfectly good hardware and buy a brand new machine they simply do not need, or risk having their bank accounts, medical records, and private data exposed to cyber attacks on an unsupported, vulnerable system. If you are sitting there wondering why your reliable, fast, and fully functional PC is suddenly being treated like disposable garbage by Microsoft, you are not alone. And what you are about to hear next exposes the massive financial engine and shocking hypocrisy driving this artificial crisis. Microsoft did offer a supposed lifeline to people trapped on older hardware, but it comes with a deeply insulting catch. If you want to keep your current Windows 10 PC secure after the cutoff date, you have to pay a yearly subscription fee for extended security updates. This program starts at $30 a year for everyday consumers and $61 per device for businesses, with costs escalating aggressively every single year. They are essentially charging you a penalty fee for not throwing your computer in the trash and buying a new one. For a small business running a fleet of functional 6-year-old computers, or a school managing a tight technology budget, this isn't just an annoyance. It is a hardware refresh bill worth thousands of dollars that they never budgeted for and cannot easily absorb. The message from Microsoft is crystal clear. Pay us to stay, pay us to upgrade, or get out of our ecosystem entirely. When you look at the raw numbers, the scale of the physical damage this policy will cause is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. Environmental analysts and hardware researchers estimate that this forced transition could generate over 1.6 billion pounds of electronic waste. To put that abstract number into terrifying perspective, if you took the hundreds of millions of laptops that Microsoft has effectively declared dead and stacked them on top of each other, the pile would reach 600 kilometers higher than the moon. We are not just talking about old plastic casings. We are talking about toxic lead, mercury, and cadmium from discarded motherboards and batteries leaching into landfill soil all over the globe. Global recycling centers simply do not have the infrastructure to process this volume of perfectly good screens, keyboards, and processors being shredded simultaneously. Furthermore, manufacturing a single new personal computer generates roughly 300 to 400 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent across its production chain. When you multiply that massive carbon footprint across tens of millions of forced and unnecessary hardware replacements, the resulting emissions rival the annual output of mid-sized countries. The sheer hypocrisy of this situation is staggering. Microsoft routinely publishes glossy sustainability reports, heavily promoting their commitment to the environment and carbon neutrality to investors and the press. Yet, at the exact same time, they are quietly executing a business strategy that produces one of the largest single waves of electronic waste in the history of consumer technology. They are turning perfectly good technology into toxic e-waste just to satisfy a corporate agenda, drive sales for their hardware manufacturing partners, and force users onto a new platform where they can be aggressively monetized through ads and subscriptions. Bill Gates, the man whose original vision was to put a computer on every desk and in every home, is reportedly erupting in frustration as he watches the company he built abandon its fundamental principles. The company that once defined industry standards for responsible software is now prioritizing flashy AI features, forced cloud storage, and shareholder-pleasing hardware cycles over the very customers who built its empire. But Microsoft made a massive, potentially fatal miscalculation. They assumed that their users were so deeply locked into the Windows ecosystem that they would simply swallow the cost, throw away their old machines, and blindly comply. Instead, this ultimatum has sparked one of the largest mass exoduses in the history of desktop computing. Rather than heading to the electronics store to buy a new Windows 11 machine with AI crammed into the taskbar, millions of everyday users, gamers, and IT professionals are taking a completely different path. They are wiping their hard drives and installing Linux. For decades, Linux carried a reputation as a complicated text-based operating system meant only for hardcore programmers, server administrators, and tech geeks who enjoyed typing cryptic commands into a terminal, but that outdated stereotype has been completely shattered. Modern Linux distributions have evolved to be incredibly user-friendly, specifically designing their interfaces to mimic the familiar, comfortable layout of Windows. Across YouTube and Reddit, ordinary people like teachers, accountants, and retirees are sharing tutorials proving that anyone can make the switch successfully. Two specific operating systems are leading this massive rebellion: Zorin OS and Linux Mint. When the reality of the Windows 10 death sentence finally hit the public, Zorin OS saw an absolute explosion in interest, racking up over 2 million downloads in just 3 months. Nearly 800,000 of those downloads came directly from furious Windows users looking for an escape route. Zorin OS was brilliantly engineered by two brothers who understood that people leaving Windows do not want to learn a new system. They just want to escape a bad one. The interface offers layouts that perfectly replicate the look and feel of Windows 7 and Windows 10, meaning non-technical users can sit down and navigate it instantly without any hesitation. Similarly, Linux Mint utilizes a desktop environment called Cinnamon, which is so seamlessly designed that everyday users often don't even realize they are no longer using Windows until someone points it out. The installation process, which kept ordinary users away from Linux for years, has completely transformed into a simple graphical menu where you click a few buttons, choose your time zone, and are ready to go in less time than it takes Windows to install a routine update. What these fleeing users are discovering is nothing short of a technological resurrection. Linux doesn't care about your missing TPM2 chip, and it doesn't artificially gatekeep your processor. You can take a 10-year-old computer that Windows 11 aggressively rejected, install Linux Mint or Zorin OS in a matter of minutes, and suddenly the machine feels alive again. Boot times that drag toward a full minute on bloated Windows systems are dropping to under 10 seconds on the exact same hardware. Applications snap open instantly, the system stays incredibly responsive, and old hardware runs faster than it has in years. This happens because these lightweight Linux systems aren't bogged down by Microsoft's relentless background advertising, forced telemetry tracking, or heavy artificial intelligence processes that secretly consume your computer's memory and drain your battery life. For the first time in years, people are experiencing what it feels like to truly own their computer, free from a corporate overseer that dictates what they are allowed to run. The implications of this grassroots revolt are terrifying for the executives in Redmond. Historically, Microsoft relied on two massive walls to keep users trapped inside Windows: software compatibility and PC gaming. Both of those walls have now completely collapsed. The modern American knowledge worker or student spends the vast majority of their computing time inside a web browser. Whether you are using Google Docs, Gmail, Zoom, Slack, or web-based design tools, the operating system sitting underneath that browser has become entirely irrelevant. This realization isn't just hitting home users. Massive institutions are waking up. The German state of Schleswig-Holstein is migrating 30,000 government workers entirely to Linux, while hardware giants like Lenovo and Dell are officially certifying and selling their flagship laptops with Linux pre-installed. Furthermore, the gaming barrier that protected Windows for decades has been obliterated by Valve's Steam Deck and its revolutionary Proton compatibility layer. Gamers are discovering that thousands of major Windows titles now run flawlessly on Linux, often delivering significantly higher frame rates and lower latency because the operating system isn't constantly interrupting the graphics card to run a background update or a tracking service. The great Windows 10 e-waste scandal of 2025 is exposing a brutal truth about the modern tech industry. Microsoft gambled that you would care more about the comfort of their ecosystem than you care about your own wallet, your digital privacy, or the massive environmental destruction happening in the background. They engineered an artificial crisis designed to turn your perfectly good computer into toxic garbage, all to satisfy their hardware partners and boost their cloud subscription metrics. But they drastically underestimated the intelligence and the resilience of the American consumer. This catastrophic misstep is transforming millions of loyal, decades-long Windows users into passionate advocates for open-source freedom. The unquestioned dominance of Windows is officially cracking, giving way to a future where consumers finally demand respect, true ownership over their devices, and software that actually works for them. If you found this interesting, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives like this.